Jesse.
Hello YouTube, this is DVD Review Studios here, and today we shall be doing a review of the slightly controversial continuation of the Breaking Bad legacy, this being the movie El Camino, which was kind of a secretive project produced in 2019 for Netflix, and it provides a conclusive end for one of the main protagonists, Jesse Pinkman, with this essentially being, in my eyes, the 63rd episode of Breaking Bad, which funnily enough, I think a working title for this film was just 63, which makes sense in that respect. And for what this film was, it received mostly positive to kind of mixed responses from the fan base. I personally enjoyed it for what it was. Some of it felt a little bit forced, and if they were going to create a project like this, I'm glad they made it sooner rather than later, where, in my honest opinion, some of the creative decisions and cameos were very much hit or miss, along with continuity, even for only so many years after Breaking Bad, being quite the struggle. For example, one of the main things and one of the main gripes that many seem to have with this film is the return of Jesse Plemons, who portrayed Todd throughout Breaking Bad. And that is solely based on just him looking slightly different to what he was as Todd in the fifth season of the original show, where obviously the actor has changed in several ways and returning to film scenes as Todd, in particular for flashback moments, despite being performed so phenomenally, in my opinion. A lot of people really disliked how he looked in the film, and there were many aspects of the costumes and the makeup designs that really didn't quite match with what Breaking Bad had, and that's something that seems to bug a lot of people. Personally, I wasn't too fussed about things like that, but to counter that, flashbacks, especially when flashbacks are very prominent in the film, these are arguably some of the most important scenes, and so in terms of delivery, visually, I think that's where, sadly, the film is a little bit lackluster, but otherwise, in terms of storytelling, this provides more backstory to Jesse's thought process from the fifth season, and I absolutely love the direction that they took the character and what this film managed to achieve in terms of the storytelling. That's a huge strength that this film is commendable for in my eyes. And from the opening scene, we have an incredible cameo from Jonathan Banks, who obviously portrays Mike Ehrmantraut, and it sets up the end goal, the end dream slash destination for Jesse, where he wants to escape to Alaska. And that conversation was very touching in my eyes, which kind of puts things in perspective for Jesse. And so with flashbacks, we see a lot more of what happened behind closed doors in the fifth season of Breaking Bad. And that mainly refers to the torture that Jesse endured while being held by the gang of white supremacists. And these sequences really do hit hard in my eyes, and it really makes the freedom all the more deserving after the torment that Jesse was put through. Seeing Jesse speeding off into the night is honestly one of my all-time favorite scenes from Breaking Bad, having just escaped the lair of Jack's gang. And having this continuation for this scene was absolutely incredible. Already a satisfactory way to kind of keep the momentum going from this sequence. And it's interesting to see how the production team behind the scenes of this film were able to try and replicate the costumes and the looks for each character. There's a really great bonus feature here on the Blu-ray which details how the makeup department approached this, and although there are definitely inaccuracies, their efforts are commendable, and the level and attention to detail that went into creating these costumes, it's just stunning to see such heart go into a project such as this. I really appreciate the level of familiarity that's brought back into this film with several side characters from Breaking Bad, mainly Badger and Skinny Pete, who for sure in my eyes were fan favorites, and they clearly mean a lot to Jesse and vice versa, where it's heartbreaking to see Jesse turn up at their house in need, and this almost being kind of a last place for him to turn, where obviously they do help him. And their shared plans are quite interesting, even bringing in the character of Old Joe from the season 5 Magna episode,
Magnets! Yeah?
and the way he is kind of introduced to help Jesse's escape plan from the police, where he checks out the El Camino car, where we assume he's going to just destroy it, but instead he detects a GPS alarm and flees the house before the police can arrive. The escape plan is a little bit convoluted, where Jesse escapes in Badger's car, Badger drives Skinny Pete's car hundreds of miles away to then report it stolen as an alibi, and Skinny keeps the title car of the film, the El Camino, where he essentially covers for Jesse, where in a deleted scene, which is again on the Blu-ray, Skinny Pete is arrested, and I was a little disappointed that not only that scene, but the police interview footage from the original teaser trailer for this film was not included in the final film. It seemed like a really obvious inclusion, but just likely did not fit the pacing, which I can respect in some ways, but I just wish there was kind of more to this. I think the original cut, from what I read online, was about 3 hours long, so they've obviously trimmed this down quite a lot to about an hour and 50 minutes or so. And so, with Jesse now on the run, he needs money to disappear. And what better way to bring in the character of Ed, the vacuum repairman, played phenomenally by Robert Forster? This, I believe, was one of his last roles as an actor before sadly passing away, but the legacy that he has on this show, both in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, as well as obviously this, it's fantastic to see him included in such a significant way. And so, leading up to the scenes including him, there's a really great sequence of current and flashback moments, which show Jesse being forced to assist Todd with various awkward moments, such as the burial of an innocent cleaning lady.
Nice lady. Excellent housekeeper.
This is where he's given the tour of the apartment building, and in the present timeline, Jesse returns to the apartment looking for some hidden money, which he plans to use in order to disappear. This is where Jesse is crossed by a villain who is new to us as the viewer, but still exists in his past, and whilst he is raiding Todd's apartment, I loved the twist of two police officers just suddenly turning up who were not actually cops. They were also looking for the money, which was ingeniously hidden in the fridge. And throughout, the cinematography for this sequence is just incredible. My favorite was the overhead shot showing multiple Jesses just stripping the apartment down to its bare bones in search of where the money could potentially be hidden. And so Jesse makes a crooked deal with the fake cops to keep a share of the money, one of which he then does recognize, who is named Neil. And this is where we see in a flashback, adding to Jesse's torture, he was one of the people responsible for the sequence where Jesse is actually locked up and forced into cooking meth. He was the one that installed the ceiling rails for Jesse's chain. And so once Jesse does have the money, in a heartbreaking moment of clarity, he tries to get Ed to take him away for a fresh start, and referencing the failed pickup from season 5 of Breaking Bad, Jesse has to pay a fee for that, as well as now a new fee for the next relocation. The only problem being, he doesn't have enough money. And seeing him struggle once again, arguing and just trying to make some kind of sense out of what dire situation he's been through and how he's begging for a chance at a fresh start, it just seems so cruel for him to be once again beaten down by something as measly, in his eyes anyway, as $1,800, which is all he needs to disappear. And so, knowing where a lot of money is, he pays a visit to Neil and his group, where he blatantly just asks for the money to disappear. And this turns into a beautifully crafted shootout scene, almost kind of Western inspired. And again, I would say it's 100% worth grabbing the Blu-ray or just checking out the behind the scenes, just for moments like this where we detail the shots involved, for how Vince Gilligan managed to create such an intense sequence of events where Jesse does finally kill Neil and his partner, and he steals their money too, giving him enough finally for a fresh start. And you can just feel the triumph of Jesse leaving and blowing up that building, having secured what he needs to take back his future. The time jump between Jesse leaving with the money and then arriving in Alaska is kind of sudden in my eyes. There's a couple of deleted scenes which I feel would have been far better to have been inserted into the final film, such as a great moment of Jesse arriving at the vacuum repair store, needing help with a wound he sustained during the gunfight, which would have made the pacing, in my eyes, a little bit better, but obviously it was cut for varying reasons, I would imagine. But one of the best scenes in this film which was surprisingly well edited, was the cameo scene of the man himself, the man who knocks, Walter White. And this was spliced between the gunfight and the end sequence of arriving in Alaska. And any Breaking Bad project, in my eyes, would feel incomplete without Walter White making some form of appearance. He's confirmed dead in this film over a radio broadcast, so this is, in a sense, the only way Walt could have been introduced once again, and that is through the power of a flashback. And this flashback scene takes place in basically the events spiraling around season 2. And again, behind the scenes content is worth checking out for that alone, but the conversation that Walt has with Jesse and the sort of deep meanings behind it, I love seeing these characters once again, and in my eyes, where they're scheming together as a pair, it's so great to see that before obviously the fallout of how their lives both spiraled way out of control in the events that happened throughout the rest of Breaking Bad. But I found their scene bizarrely refreshing, and even though it didn't add much in terms of story, it was certainly the cherry on top for this film in my eyes. And so for a conclusive end for Jesse Pinkman, and in a sense really for the Breaking Bad franchise, I don't really see where this franchise could really go beyond obviously the continuation that we are currently having with Better Call Saul, where as of the time of recording this video, Season 6 is still airing. But this was a very sweet happy ever after. It was one final struggle for Jesse Pinkman, and I'm really glad that the character did have a continuation and a conclusion where we now see him on the open road in Alaska with his new life. There was a really fun cameo from the character of Jane from the second season of Breaking Bad, who tragically died at the end of that season. That was a very brutal and very heartbreaking moment where Walt just witnesses her choking on her own vomit and decides just not to save her for the various complications that Walt and Jesse have had with their relationship. And so Jesse still thinking of her is quite sweet, and I love as well the attention to detail where he passes Ed a letter addressed to the little child character Brock, where the mother, Andrea, was very unceremoniously murdered by Todd in season 5. So it kind of wraps up all the loose ends to some extent. We don't know what was on that letter, but apparently one day in the future, Vince Gilligan will release that information to the public, and I would very much like to see what the contents of that letter would be. And to wrap up this video, here's a look at the actual Blu-ray set in itself, which took forever to come out, by the way. I was under the impression this would have remained a Netflix exclusive, but thankfully not. It just took a little while to finally bring this out on physical media, so it's great to have this in the collection with the rest of the Breaking Bad stuff. And there's a list of the bonus features like I mentioned before. There's some really great deleted scenes and behind-the-scenes extras. We also have audio commentary with both the creator Vince Gilligan and Aaron Paul, who portrays Jesse Pinkman. And then we have a super commentary with various members of the cast and crew involved, the making of, a gag reel, deleted and extended scenes, 3 scene kind of studies with director Vince Gilligan where he breaks down sort of like an overhead paper shot of what he had in mind for certain sequences, such as the shootout scene, and then various bits of promotional material on there as well. And removing the slipcover, same contents beneath there, nothing different. And there's the disc as well. So that's going to do it for my review of El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave me a like down below. Let me know in the comments, were you satisfied with this conclusion for Jesse Pinkman? And for more content, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, DVD Review Studios.
Are you threatening me?